everyone. Welcome to At Home with Sally. I'm Sally Clarkson, and I have the biggest privilege in the world to be with so many friends from all over the world who join me every week to listen to my stories, inspiration, biblical encouragement, and I am just so glad that you're here today. Thanks so much for joining me. Hello, my friends. How are you today? Today is really fun for me. It's always fun when I get to be with my children online. And a lot of people have been writing me and asking me two things. One is, how can I get my children involved in the movies and in television and everything that's online like your son did? Well, you have to follow your own course there. Good luck. No, I really look back and feel like we could tell from the time Nathan was 7 years old. He was giving this little speech kind of on the side because it was really a class for my older children. And he was so engaged in Audie Murphy. And several adults came to me at the end of the time and said, "Oh my goodness, your son is going to be an actor when he grows up." When he was 7 years old. And so the other question that I often get is, how do you know what to watch, how to look at media, what to give to your children at what age? Because there are many parameters that are thrown out there loosely in the world. So I thought I would ask my relative expert, Nathan Clarkson, since he is involved in this whole area, just to have a chat with me online today about what is okay, what is acceptable, what role should media play in your lives today. So, hi, Nathan.
Hi, good to be here.
Nathan is where, tell us where you are, Nathan.
I'm currently in New York City,
Okay,
Big Apple.
you're in the Big Apple, and you're making it in the Big Apple. You and Keely both, which
Yes.
is really fun for me. Okay, so Nathan, you've been involved in acting and filmmaking and in Hollywood for how many years? Many years now.
Oh man, you're gonna show how old I am. I'm getting old, Mom, if you can believe it. But I've been doing it for about 15 years.
Oh my goodness. Okay. And you're making it, and I'm just so proud of what you and Kelia do. But why did you decide to spend your whole life making movies and acting and telling stories?
Well, like you mentioned, I have loved stories since I was a young kid. I loved movies, I loved books, I loved picture books, I loved everything that had to do with stories. You know, playing pretend was just my everyday pastime and desire as a kid. I can't even count the hours outside just playing pretend, imagining myself as a hero, part of a grand tale, and all those childhood desires I found kind of carried into my adulthood, and that's when I really began investigating stories and seeing just how powerful and meaningful stories are. That's something I put a lot of study into in the past years of my life. Is looking at how stories shape us and how stories inform us and how stories articulate and define reality for us. And even look at how God shares his truth in the word of God. It's told through a story. Genesis begins with in the beginning. And then you see Jesus, and Jesus on his ministry on earth. How did he share his truth? He told it through parables. So
Mhm.
God created us to be story-oriented creatures. He knows that stories are powerful for us, and that's how he created us to be. And so if I wanted to make an effect in the world, I wanted to be a part of telling stories that could do that, telling good and beautiful and true stories that might help shape the world in a way that's towards God and towards truth and towards beauty. And so I've always loved stories, and I just found that film and TV were the way that we told stories today. And there's so many statistics on that, but we've told stories for all of human history, but film and TV are the ways that we tell stories today. And so if I was going to be involved in telling the stories that had an affect on culture, on this world, then that was going to be in movies and TV. And so that's what I ended up doing. And aside from all those grander missions of how important stories are and telling good stories, I also just like it. I always just love playing pretend, and now I get to get paid to play pretend. And so, yeah, that's why I went into the world of movies and television.
Well, I love that answer. And it hits my heart because I raised you in my home education philosophy by exposing you to who I thought were the best writers, the best stories, the best musicians, the best everything imaginative that would fill your little heart and mind. And then I would give you all, after I would read to you every morning, literally thousands of books, then I would send you outside to pretend the stories that
Mhm.
you had just read about.
But not
And
only that, you fashioned us with armor and costumes and wooden swords, and you gave us all the necessary tools to make the world, our imaginary worlds alive.
I did. I went to all the charity
It's your
shops.
fault. I'm an actor. That's it really
Well, and I'm proud of you. So it worked out kind of well, and I'm glad that that you are where you are. But one of the things I wanted to just expose all of our listeners to is that because we're in such a mediagenic world, so to speak, I think sometimes it's easy to cloud our minds with what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable to shape our children's stories with, because some stories are great and some stories are not great. And
yeah.
even when I look back on you children, and I've done a lot of study on children's brains this year, and children have a developmental phase where everything is true to them from 0 to 3 or 4 years old, everything. And so you have to be very careful as you're shaping their sense of virtue, their sense of morals, their sense of self, of marriage, of life, of beauty, of all these different things. They are taking it in from the moment they're babies until the first few years of life. And so they're very sensitive. I remember I made the mistake of showing Bambi, which doesn't seem it seems innocuous enough, but I showed Bambi to Sarah and she cried for 2 hours. You know, I didn't realize children are very sensitive. They're developing their sense of goodness, their sense of self. So when they're very little, you need to give them the highest quality of good things. I know I was even picky about, me being picky, or me being idealistic, we'll call it, when they had really kind of violent cartoons. I kind of tried to find cartoons that were beautiful, that had good characters and that had wonderful stories. And so there were a lot of things like that that even I wanted to be careful to shape your lives on, because you can kind of tell as children develop what kinds of things they should be exposed to. But anyway, I'm going to leave that for a moment. But I want you to tell us the statistic that you shared with me that shocked me about how much people consume media today, because I think it's so important for us to control everything that goes into our minds. It says, guard your heart, for from it flow the springs of life. Heart and mind are equivalent words in some of the Hebrew language. And so we're supposed to guard our hearts. We're supposed to, whatever is true, honest, just, right, pure, lovely, think on those things. We're supposed to worship God with our minds. So we need to be careful in how we're spending our time and be aware of how we're spending our time. This statistic is really revealing to me.
Yeah, so you're exactly right. And as I mentioned, stories, we kind of intrinsically know that they're powerful, right? But so often right now, many of us just kind of consume media, TV, movies without thinking. It's just an everyday part of our lives that we don't really think about. To the effect of the statistics that I shared with you, it really kind of it was eye-opening for me. We had a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist on my podcast, The Overthinkers, a while ago, Walt Hickey, and he was talking about this statistic that on average, Americans consume 10 hours of media a day. Now, that's distributed across a lot of different mediums, but 10 hours of media a day, and it's in between 4 and 6 hours of that is television and movies. And what he was talking about when in our conversation on the podcast was, most of us do this very unthinkingly. We just kind of turn something on, we flip around, we watch something, we don't really think about it. But in his book, that's called You Are What You Watch, he details all of these studies that actually, when we spend 10 hours a day doing anything, it's going to change us.
Anything.
If you spent 10 hours a day working out, it's going to change your body. And so 10
Mhm.
hours a day, at least 4 to 6 hours of those watching film and TV is going to change your mind and your heart. And there's a lot of studies and statistics and data that shows this actually does not just children, but adults too. Yes, your kids, absolutely. They're even more malleable, their minds, but you too, it's going to change how you see the world and how you understand reality. And even more than that, it can change you physiologically, neurologically. It's really amazing. When you spend 10 hours a day doing anything, it's going to change you. And so exactly what you said, yes, stories are powerful, and anything powerful can be used for good, but can also be used for bad. And so many of us, both with our kids and with ourselves, we kind of consume unthinkingly. We consume film and television unthinkingly, and that's something we need to be really aware of, because the things that we watch and the stories that we engage with will change how we see things, how we see other people, how we see ourselves, how we see God, how we see morality. And so it's really,
How we see the value of human beings.
absolutely. And so
Mhm.
it's really, really important that we think deeply about what we are consuming for that much time every single day. Because again, stories are powerful, and that's a good thing, but they can also, any powerful thing can be used for ill as well. And so this is a really, really important thing to me, and why I want to be a part of telling good and true stories. But yeah, this is a thing to think about for both ourselves and for our families.
Well, one thing that I learned many years ago when I was kind of studying all of this is that there is no neutral worldview. In other words, every single story, every single sitcom, every single movie, television show is coming at us with a message that
Yes.
they care to tell us, that they want us to believe in, the value system that they have adopted that they think is acceptable. And the other thing I want to think, I don't want to pour any guilt on anyone, including me, but does anybody spend 10 hours a day reading the Word of God? Uh,
Well,
no,
I
I mean,
do. A lot of times I do. I get up in the morning and start reading the Bible and don't stop until dinner. So I don't know
there
about
you
you.
go. But it's really something we're thinking about because let's just say that every single movie, cartoon, all these different things have a worldview, have a system of values. Whatever you're sowing, you're reaping. Whatever you're planting is going to grow. And I think that it's so easy. I've seen so many children, and I hope I'm not stepping on people's toes, but overuse iPads or telephones. They just want their kids to be quiet, so they just send them a little machine.
And
And is it
everything on that iPad is implanting messages in the kid's brain and heart.
everything, or keeping them from thinking more deep thoughts, more profound thoughts, more keeping them from being creative, keeping them from writing a story, drawing a picture, making up a song, pretending and outside. Is it harder for me, and is it harder for all adults? Um, to do something useful. Like if you say to yourself, I'm going to read for an hour every night before I watch something on television, then yes, it's harder. Or I'm going to be sure that I'm going to play a game with my children. I'm going to go on a walk outside. I'm going to do whatever because media is not neutral in the way that it affects us. Everything that goes in has an impact on the brain patterns, the brain roadways that are in our minds. And even the way that they do it, like I was very careful in books and in pictures that I showed you all to try to pick what was beautiful and true and could inspire you. Because there are a lot of just terrible looking little, like I said, cartoons or things like that. Everything that you're putting in your mind is developing an appetite.
I
Maybe,
have another thing to add to this, that I think you're so right, because we a lot of times get caught up on things that are obviously bad, right? Violence or whatever it
right,
might be, explicit things. But something that was important to you and dad that I still remember, and you put in your book, Educating the Wholehearted Child, that's really important is, we kind of sometimes often focus so much on the quote bad things, and we shouldn't
right.
watch those. Yes, of course. Particularly for children whose minds are incredibly malleable.
Mhm.
But also, you said we also need to be looking at and engaging with excellent things. That
Right,
might not be necessarily morally evil, but is it excellent? Is it beautiful? Is
right.
it good? And I remember this whole thing that you and dad had, which was around appetites. And
Mhm,
so often we get so caught up in just the moral aspect, which is important. But there's also
mhm,
another aspect, which is the excellence aspect. And it's going,
mhm,
are you exposing yourself and your kids and the things you're watching, and the things that you're engaging with, to beautiful things, to good things, to quality stories, to deep things that cause you to think more deeply, that cause you to act more courageously, things that actually are of high quality. And so you would constantly, we weren't deprived of art or creativity as kids, and we're both here to say movies and stories are good, but there is an aspect you have to ask and say. are the ones of the stories I'm engaging with, good ones, not just morally good, but also high quality. And you and dad had a high standard for what kind of things you would let go into your very malleable kids' minds, so that the appetites they were forming around art and stories and media and movies and music, they would be ones that didn't just reflect us morally, which is an important start, but also reflected God's quality and beauty and in that aspect. And so I remember you taking us to art museums and symphonies. I remember the movies we watched would be ones that were filmed beautifully and acted well. They weren't twaddle. They weren't low quality. And so that's another aspect too, is really focus not just on the morality, but also the quality of what is going in your children's hearts. Is it beautiful? Is it of high craftsmanship and
Right.
done well? I think that's another important aspect of the conversation.
Oh, I so do. We've all heard the phrase, you are what you eat. Now, all of us know that every once in a while you can have a fast food meal, like
Yes.
whether it's a
I don't want to be
McDonald's.
legalist about this.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
no, no. No, I'm not talking about evil and I'm talking about beauty right now.
Yeah.
In the sense of if you ate fast food every single meal, it would have a total effect on your body. It would
Yes.
corrupt your body. It would make you more open to cancer. It would cause you to gain unnecessary calories. It would clog your arteries. In other words, yes, there are going to be some silly or just some things along the way, some movies, some cartoons,
Fun
ways.
hamburgers and French fries, movies and cartoons.
Yeah. But if that was all your appetite was, I often get the question, they say, Nathan's making movies, he's living in New York, he's a writer of books, all your other children seem to be people of words and messages and what curriculum did you use? And I think we did whatever is true, honest, right, lovely, beautiful. And then we would sit at the dinner table at night, and every single night was a big discussion at our house. We talked. We what did you think of that? Who did you like as the hero? And we taught you that because you were made in the image of God, you had incredible capacity for recreating beauty, for putting out stories and light and goodness in the world. And we gave you an imagination that you were called by God, made in his image, to exhibit excellence and beauty in your worlds, in whatever God chose for you to do, or whatever you decided that you wanted to do for your work. And I love that you said that because you have to see a lot of the waste of 10 hours as as something that isn't beautiful, that isn't the best, that isn't excellent. It's just fast food. And if all you eat is fast food for your brain will become fast food.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing too, and I know this as I've been a kid and I've been around kids. Kids are going to naturally want McDonald's. If you give them a choice between broccoli and baked chicken, which is good for them, or a Happy Meal with French fries and a burger, they're going to choose the burger 1,000 times. So, this won't always be fun when you're trying to invest in your children's hearts, but they will thank you one day. And again,
Mhm.
as you said, Mom, a burger and fries is sometimes fun, and that's okay. We're not we're not legalist about it, but there is an aspect to your kids are going to thank you someday when you have given them one, and when you give them healthy food to grow on, and so
Mhm.
their bodies grow up well and strong, and they're also going to thank you that you gave them healthy, artistic and message-driven and aesthetic food to grow up on, so their minds grow up healthy and strong. And so that's something to really consider is both the two parts. What messages are these movies and television reflecting? Do they reflect what God says? Do they reflect his goodness? And I'll say this really quickly as a side note. I think the rating system, sometimes we kind of rely on that too much. If something's
Oh
G,
yeah.
it's okay. And if something's arts, it's not okay. And to be honest, there's some R-rated movies that are more Christian and more beautiful and good. And there's some
Mhm.
G-rated movies that I won't even watch because the messages are so off. And so this is something to think about too. But you have to think about those two things. Does this reflect goodness and truth and beauty that we find in God? And is it quality and beautiful and high? And so those are things that I really would encourage every parent to think about for their kids and every person to think about for themselves as they're engaging with media, TV, and movies on such a high regular basis.
Well, and I think that we curated a lot of things. It takes time to curate things
That's
because,
a good word.
yeah, I think that we try to say have as many yeses in your life as possible.
Yeah.
In other words, we didn't say, "Oh, these things are so immoral and impure, and no, you may not do it." No, we tried to say, "Do you realize how many amazing things there are out there?"
Hmm.
I even remember when we went is here in Colorado Springs, the
Yeah.
original troop, and we had so much fun talking about it. We were all greatly impacted by it,
And we still
and
sing the songs at home when we're all there.
yeah, we do. And so it's not a matter of um, being legalistic. It's a matter of being creative and of being dynamic and of engaging and taking the time to have those great stories and movies. Well, sometime we'll have to have you on sometime to tell us what are your five favorite movies or what should we be watching or whatever. But
Yeah, that's dangerous territory because someone will like
yeah.
something. But I will say, just off of that, when you develop your appetites and help develop your kids' appetites, you'll
Mhm.
find that it's that all of a sudden that your kids and you actually start craving more beautiful, more true, more good things naturally. It might be difficult at the beginning if you're, if you've only ever been used to McDonald's food as far as entertainment and TV and art and film, it might be kind of a detox where you have to start training your appetite for something new. But when
Right.
you continue down that path of really being intentional about what you're watching and engaging with and listening to, all of a sudden you'll find that you will actually start craving good and beautiful and true things, and that the kind of more shallower or less beautiful, less true things won't actually appeal to you as much anymore. And I
They
can
don't
definitely
entertain you even as much. Yeah.
absolutely.
It's so true. And I just love that we're talking about this. I think that all of the things that we want to believe in our lives, we need to have stories that show us those beliefs. We
Yeah.
need to see movies that have a great marriage relationship. We need to see movies where the parents love their children. We need to see movies. So Nathan, you've got a lot of movies you got to make. Um, but just understanding that what you sow, you'll reap. And so thank you so much for giving me your time today, for coming on this little podcast. I just thought there needed to be something said about the fact that God has entrusted us with his time. He knew that we were going to be the generation of people who would live in a place where all of our lives were going to be exposed to media every day.
Yeah.
And yet it's one more area where we can subdue, where we can bring beauty to chaos, where we can bring just harmony and goodness. And I think it's a worthy profession. And I hope that you're able to make many great movies or be in many great movies in your lifetime. I think that'll be great. Any last things you want to say as you leave? And also tell everybody where they can find you, because I absolutely love your overthinkers. And I was even talking with two leaders last night. These were men who have this profound ministry with different people, and they were looking up your podcast,
Oh, how
and so,
fun.
so I just love it. So anyway, tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me at nathanclarkson.me. You can find me on any of the socials. Just search my name, Nathan Clarkson. I have lots of movies out there, some for adults, some for kids, some for families. But all of them, I really have put a lot of effort in trying to reflect truth and goodness and beauty with the fish and loaves that God has given me. So I hope you'll engage with me. I love hearing from people. And also, you can listen to my podcast called The Overthinkers, where every week we ask some big question and have an expert on and talk to them about it. So head on over there. We love having new people listen along for fun. And also, if you do enjoy my mom and my discussions and the stuff we think, we recently had a book come out called Uniquely You, which is a continuation of our story into loving unique kids and all the different ways they can be created. So yeah, that's how to find me. Get a copy of Uniquely You. And I was going to say, Mom, where can they find you? But I guess I already found you. So
Well, and I do. I got two letters about Uniquely You just this morning, so I'm glad you mentioned it. And anyway, Nathan, pray a blessing on all the people who are listening to us today.
yeah.
And thank you again so much for being here.
God, thank you so much that you are a beautiful God of stories and art and expression and goodness and heroism and inspiration. We love that the first thing we saw you do in Genesis was create. You are a creative God, and that's so amazing and beautiful. And we want to act in likeness to you and create beautiful, good, and true things that breathe life into people. I pray that you give us all wisdom, both as we are deciphering what's good for ourselves and for our families and for our children, about what kind of things, what kind of stories we should be putting into our souls and minds. Guide us into the things that will lift us up and draw us closer to you, and reflect who you are and the goodness that you have put into the world. I pray that you give us wisdom and guidance on how to do that for ourselves and our families. And we thank you that you are someone who loves us and loves beauty and loves all the wonderful things that we get to experience in this world from you. We love you, and yeah, in your name, Amen.
Amen. All right, my
Amen.
friends, have a wonderful day and thanks a lot, Nathan. Bye-bye. I hope you've enjoyed our time together today and that you'll join me next week. Be sure to look for more inspiration on my blog at sallyclarkson.com. Thanks for joining me. Bye-bye.